Absolutely, you answered the question, and but also you made, I think, a broader point that I think is so important about democracy and its effect on security, as well as such an important point about why diversity is so important, which is it's important for its own sake, it's important for moral reasons and reparative reasons, but it's also important for instrumental reasons, for functional reasons. And I often think that we underplay the value of racial and ethnic and diversity across a number of different differences, class, gender, sexuality, and so forth, for the improvement of ideas, because I actually think they are part and parcel of the same thing, in the sense that different lived experiences, different backgrounds actually help to make us smarter as communities. And that often helps on small teams, as you're describing, but it also, I think, can work at a democracy level. And I think that's a crucial interplay that you've described so beautifully. And at this moment in the field, where a dominant theory is one that's being questioned in a variety of ways, and new theories are coming up and other people are coming up in the field, I think what Horizon 2045 and N² is doing is just absolutely right on in terms of supporting that work. And that brings me to my final question, if I might press my luck with one more, which is really looking to the future. And you mentioned earlier family, you mentioned your child, and both as parents. I think of this in a broad and long sweep of those people who was involved in this work generations ago. My grandfather was on the Atomic Energy Commission in the Kennedy administration, and I grew up hearing about nuclear risk as well as atomic energy, as at the dinner table, and have had it in my mind for a long time. And he certainly was of that generation. We've both got children, and we're now thinking about what this even more complex world is going to hold. In my mind, a few of the intersections you've described are top of mind. So one is, as artificial intelligence continues to develop, how do we think about the connection between AI and other digital developments with nuclear security and other forms of international security? So that's one. Another edge is clearly the climate and nuclear nexus. I think there's too little conversation between those of us who focus on climate solutions and those of us who work on the nuclear challenges, and we're trying to do some work at those intersections. But as you look ahead in the world that our children will inherit, what are some of those intersections that are most top of mind for you, and where do you think N² and Horizon 2045 will be headed and leading us in the years to come?
What a great question. So yes, okay, so I mentioned my son before, but I also have a daughter who is 16 and is very interested in architecture and design and the built environment and how it relates to the larger environment. And she said something to me the other day about, I think that what I want to do is work on ways that you can build things that are essentially an act of rewilding the world around the thing you built. And I thought that was so interesting, because I couldn't really imagine a 16-year-old uttering those words when I was 16. It was just a way of thinking about the world that feels very modern to me and very encouraging. And it expresses something about the importance of being able to think across boundaries, to span boundaries between issue spaces. It's where all of the power lies. So what do I think those interesting places are? Well, democracy, I'm going to come back to that. We have a colleague named Aditi Juneja who's leading work on the future of democracy out to 2076. And she has made it really abundantly clear to us that all the research shows that we're really foolish to think that nuclear nations of the world will continue to be democracies. If we're assuming a status quo into the future, or a steady state projection from where we are out to, say, the middle of this century, we're just probably fooling ourselves. And then, as we all know, as democracy begins to decline, authoritarianism can take hold and lead to greater instability. And so all of those cycles we've got to be thinking about. And of course, we have to be thinking about what happens when resources for people to just live daily lives become much harder to get. So we're beginning, of course, to see the effects of sea level rise on communities in Vanuatu, for instance, and the kinds of immigration that is beginning to happen. And right now, we happen to be thinking about implications for nuclear weapons. But really, we should be thinking about implications for governance in the world, because we are going to have to look at all these things taken together. We are going to have to think about distributed ways of asserting agency and having power. And the fact that we have things like decentralized autonomous organizations seems to point toward a world in which we actually can aggregate maybe not around nation state affiliations anymore, but around different kinds of affiliations. We can raise $120 million for the Ukrainian war relief effort in a week through the sale of NFTs and other models in the crypto space. What else could we do? What are the ways we could actually punish bad actors or countries who are not taking our interests to heart, or who are maintaining nuclear weapons when we don't think that they should, or reward countries and entities and people who are doing right by the world? There's so much. We are right on the edge of so much capacity as human beings and ways of operating together. And I guess the final thing I have to say is we just have a big decision to make, whether we want to continue operating as the people at RAND did in 1945, in the beginning of nuclear deterrence theory, which was with an operative mental model that says the people of the world and the nations of the world cannot be trusted to cooperate. We have to have weapons of coercion in order to maintain global stability. And I just don't think we can afford to think that way anymore. We are in a time where we have to cooperate if we're going to survive. And as we approach planetary boundaries, we've got to look for cooperative models that allow us to stand up and be the best of ourselves as human beings. And frankly, to take the rights of future generations into account as we do that.